Okay, so welcome to this latest teaching session on the course on technology and future medicine. Today, for the first time ever, we're talking about digital pathology, artificial intelligence, and beyond. The first few slides have to do with Dr. Sutton and with a very recent announcement. So in the past few hours, we have decided that for the first time ever, we're going to have a performance of the future and all that jazz within the university. You know, you can imagine when you create something and you're working for the university that if it only works if you go to other places, it's really not quite as successful as if the university embraces it. So the future and all that jazz is an extension of this course where we take important messages of science that a lot of normal people wouldn't listen to a lecture on and put them in poetry and music. And I've always wanted to do this within the university, and we're going to do that for the first time on January 25th, 2019, which is Friday night specials between 4 and 7 p.m. The Division of Community Engagement has a series called Conversation Cafes, and we're going to be doing this 3-hour poetry and music and science performance as part of that. So how does it relate to Rich Sutton? Rich Sutton is giving the next teaching session next Tuesday. And not to confuse you, I asked you all whether you could do that session between 4 and 5:20, but we're not doing it then. We're doing it at 2 p.m. We're doing it in this room, so it's very similar to all the other sessions of the course. This slide I'm showing you here, which you've seen before, you are responsible for this content. It's an idea of Dr. Sutton's that is central to this course and that you need to know, and that is how he believes we should treat machines when they are as smart or smarter than we are. So we should accept them as equal, share power. The AIs will not be under our control. They will compete and cooperate with us just like other people do, and except with greater diversity and asymmetries. We need to set up mechanisms, social, legal, political, and cultural, to ensure that this works out well. Inevitably, conventional humans will be less important once this happens. So the first step: lose your sense of entitlement, the sense that human beings must always be in charge of everything on the earth and they need to be the top dog in everything. And include AIs in your circle of empathy just as you would other human beings. And if you think of the idea of diversity, this is sort of diversity in its broadest possible sense, not just being kind to all other human beings, but being kind to other sentient beings like machines that are as intelligent as we are. To put that succinctly, showing sentient machines empathy. If this kindness survives, so will we. We are at risk of not surviving as a species if we don't treat machines well, and if they become much smarter than we are, then they will not necessarily accommodate the presence of humans in the world. So this is important. And this is one of the ideas that works well in the future and all that jazz. A lot of people don't enjoy talking about AI safety or machines getting smarter than they are. It's just not a pleasant subject, but you can entertain them in an evening talking about these things. This is the iconic picture of a robot and a child that we use as the symbol for the Future and all that jazz. Future and all that jazz is an extension of this course, but you're not required to go to this session on January 25th, but I'd be very happy to see you there if you do decide to go. So the rest of this teaching session, I want to sort of explain how I justify doing what I'm going to do. So I am a pathologist. That's what I do in my day job. I'm not trying to teach you pathology. It would take a long time. It would take about 5 years. We don't have that amount of time. So I'm not trying to make pathologists of any of you. But the process of going from old-fashioned pathology where you use glass slides and microscopes from previous centuries to digital pathology is very similar to any other field of human endeavor. They will all be going digital, they will all be involved with AI, and ultimately there will be a point where machines are able to better do all things. So it's not, when I talk about that in my own field, I don't want you to feel that, you know, this is strangely disconnected to your life, has nothing to do with anything important. Because you could take whatever is really important to you or what you plan to do for a living and sort of apply the same concepts there. And are we just going to talk about science? No, we're also going to talk about politics and being truthful. And this won't be the only lecture we're talking about that. Because right now we're in a strange situation, and I think it replicates itself in many other areas, but in pathology in particular, most pathologists are in denial completely about digital pathology. They don't want to go that way. They love their microscope. They love their glass slides, and they realize that they're practicing an art that has a very, very long history, and they want to keep doing it the same way. But ultimately, resistance is futile because the arguments for going digital are so strong that they will have to do that. But the companies selling products in this area now face an enormous uphill battle trying to get people to buy into this area of digital pathology. So a lot of strange things happen, one of which is they're laying out a roadmap of exactly how to sell this idea and all the steps. So what I'm going to show you next is one of the largest companies in the field, Leica, and there's 7 steps for going digital. So they're advising you how to go digital. So here it comes. So up here they have what pathologists commonly say. And so there's nothing wrong with a microscope. Why do you want me to use something different? Why do I have to use something that has electronics inside? Our information systems won't integrate with other technology, and change is hard. I don't want to change. So these are just 3 of a large number of concerns pathologists have about going digital. But as they learn more, pathologists are finding that their apprehension is holding them back from reaping significant benefits, also discovering their old methods can't compete against today's digital solutions. So, if you think about any entrenched system, like if you go to the airport and fly Air Canada, if you look at their computing systems, they are using a very old system that is no longer, supported by the company that actually makes it. So if things seem a little slow when you're typing in, that's why. And you might say, well, gee, that's stupid. Why would an airline do that? Well, our hospital was exactly the same. I mean, it was just easier to stay with the old operating system, even when Microsoft gave up support entirely, so you were completely on your own if you use that particular operating system, but you could make a special deal with Microsoft and they would support you a little bit. So there are a lot of things like that in your life. Everywhere you turn, there are people who have opted to keep their life the same, even though in theory that doesn't make sense, but it's just easier. And so it's not just people that do that, but very large entities like hospitals and airlines. So using digital pathology workflow has many benefits. These are just a few: image quality, faster speed to results, cost savings versus shipping slides, better innovation, real-time collaboration, easy access to archived slides. Now, none of you have thought about this, but the next time you look at a large hospital building, imagine in there a room where they're storing slides. That room is so heavy that unless the floor has additional supports, it can come apart from the rest of the building and plummet like a giant bullet through the rest of the building, because it's so heavy. All these slide drawers and so on. And slides break, slides fade. From the moment a pathological slide is created, it starts fading then, and it keeps on fading. And the longer you wait, the more faded it is, and so on. So in digital pathology, you scan the slide, you make a digital image of the slide right away, and you make as many copies of that as you want. You can share it as widely as you want. And so it is really better in every way. There's also the forest and the trees problem, which with the old-fashioned microscope, you may have been very impressed looking at a pathologist using a microscope that puts a slide there and go from magnification to magnification, but every time they're looking in that microscope, they're likely to miss things because they're only seeing one stain, one magnification, one part of the slide, and there could be something very important in some other part of the slide, or that they'd see with some other stain or some other magnification that they're completely missing. Just like the forest and the trees problem, where if you're looking for something in a forest, it can be hard if the thing you're looking for is big and it's some other part of the forest and you're looking in your little part of the forest, or the other way around. You're looking for something very tiny and you're looking at the whole forest and so on. So the process of engaging digital pathology can transform an organization. So it is important to know the steps and how to get started. And so, what do you think the steps begin with? They begin with politics. Champion digital pathology. So you have to find two important people in your environment who can really be cheerleaders for this and can bring other people on board. So one should be somebody from the management side, and one should be somebody from the physician side. So you get both of those components. So choose both an executive sponsor and a pathologist. Understand the benefits of digital pathology. Read case studies, research best practices, survey barriers and high-tech needs. Use visual management to create a new workflow. Compile the business case, seek buy-in, and get feedback. So over the years, particularly if you look in Canada, there have been many institutions that started to go digital that didn't keep doing it, or cities where They have like digital components, but none of them talk to each other. They're not interoperable. There are all sorts of interesting challenges that you can see played out in individual Canadian cities. And so you've gotten to know me a little bit taking this course. I don't know what you think of me as somebody who can persuade others. So I did some of the earliest videos on digital microscopy, the virtual microscope, virtual slide, and so on. And a couple of years ago, I reached the point where I was going to pitch this to the rest of my fellow pathologists. So I got this video showing how our new environment would work if we went digital, and rather than being hunched over a microscope all day, we'd be up and active at these giant touch screens using gestures and all this kind of thing. So I sent the link to the video, and then I made a short presentation at the staff meeting. This would be terrible. It would wreck everything. It would change the whole culture of our work. It makes me so unhappy to even think about it. So I said, well, we could be the last department in Canada to do this. They said, really? I said, really? And so we kind of were for a while. But now we're planning that all of laboratory medicine in the northern half of the province is going to be centered in a giant new building in Edmonton in 4 years, 2022. And we are definitely going digital when we move into that new building. We'll scan all the slides, we'll store them for only 3 years, and digital. So they sort of, when they said that this would be terrible, they didn't want to do it. They sort of won themselves a little bit of breathing time, but within 4 years, they're going digital. So that wasn't particularly important to me that they all change. I guess it would have been a lot of work for me at that time, figuring out how we were going to distribute and manage all these giant touch screens and so on. And we never did that because people really dug in their heels. So it's not that I'm just telling you that in theory there's a lot of resistance. There really is a lot of resistance. And if you think of the things you do in your daily life that you never think about changing, a lot of them you would also resist very much if somebody suddenly told you that you had to do it differently. Yes?
Do you see privatization of pathology as an option then? If people would rather trust the pathologist themselves to do the work versus the computer? Because the pathologist would bring more perspective?
That isn't really the way it's structured at the moment. I think in everything we talk about in this course, we're thinking about very long time frames, right? And there's always an interim period where it's kind of transitional towards something else. And there's no question that here, the interim period has pathologists and sentient machine working together in concert, and that combination is better than the machine by itself or the pathologist by itself. So working with these very smart machines makes the pathologist's life better and everything. So it's not like there's this political divide right away between pathology practiced by machines and pathology practiced by human beings. That isn't really a thing now. But of course, it eventually will be. But the people selling digital pathology don't want to talk about that because it's scary, right? And they don't want to scare anybody. The sales pitch is already resisted with such vigor that they don't want to add any other negative things. So they talk about this interim period as if it will last forever, right? So, pathologists will always be important, and they'll always be in the driver's seat. The machine will just be helping them. But as we'll talk with you more about later in the course, that will only be the case as long as the human being is really adding something, right? As soon as you can imagine a sort of scenario, as the machine self-improves rapidly, you can get a situation where the machine, without self-improvement, diagnoses something, and the human being can't see anything they can improve on that. But another machine, or the next generation of a machine, or the self-improvement step, leads to considerable improvement in how things work. And the human being realizes they've not played any role in that, but they can see how the new way is better than the old. So they're just sort of sitting back and watching the machines get better and better and better, right? So that will happen. It's not just in my field it'll happen. It will happen in all other fields. Everything that's important to you, that will go through that. But the time frame won't be quite the same. We don't know exactly what the time frame will be. It could occur sooner than you think. It could occur later than you think. So does that answer your question? Okay, so define needs and goals, specify infrastructure, build workflow. So I went to one of the few large departments in the world at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City. They have integrated everything so that everything gets scanned. It's just a routine part of that. You may wonder who does the scanning. You know that in a laboratory there are lab techs who have training in laboratory procedures. So a lot of people assume that it is lab techs who will scan slides, but what they thought is that actually people with a photography background are much better at this. That's more the kind of skill that you're dealing with. You want really good images, right? It's not very similar to performing a lab test. So, and so there, it's a fascinating series of events. When I was chairman of Pathology here, 30 years ago to 25 years ago, I hired somebody in this area, sort of digital imaging, and she's now in charge of this at Memorial Sloan Kettering, a very important job. But even they have some problems. They have this huge bandwidth internet connection, and they know that it's a very robust connection capable of very fast transfer speeds. But these big images go slower than they had thought they would, and they don't really know why. So it's a matter of figuring out exactly how to send them and so on. So even in the hospitals where this is a top priority and they have the best people doing it, really everything hasn't been worked out. That doesn't mean that it won't be the future. I'm sure that it will. I'm not going to go through all these things. What I thought I would do next is introduce you to somebody. So I went to a meeting on pathology and AI, and one of the people there, Okay. So Anil Parwani, he is the author of two of the slide sets that I sent to you. And this was his presentation at that meeting in New York that I went to, Breaking the Barriers, Whole Slide Imaging. Now what does that mean? So you can imagine if you were going to take pictures of a slide, you might say, well, what's interesting in the slide? That looks interesting, you go take a picture of that, that looks interesting. That's not what they're doing. They're doing a complete image of the entire piece of tissue on the slide. So that's what whole slide imaging means. And it's not just individual pictures, it's a stitched together panorama. Maybe you've done that, like with your own camera, you see something beautiful that's long, right? You take multiple pictures and then you click the panorama setting and the camera stitches them all together. Maybe it's only 5 or 6 or 10 pictures. Here it's like thousands of pictures get stitched together to be a large digital image where you don't have to load the whole image in order to see part of it. So you're only really using the computer power to show you the part that you want to look at. You don't have to like use the entire memory that it would take to look at the whole thing. So that's what whole slide imaging means. Okay, so let me just show you some features of his presentation. He's from Ohio, and he's talking about breaking down barriers. This is what I think a lot of companies see. You know, it's not just one roadblock. It's like, what, 6, 7 roadblocks across the road. All sorts of things making it difficult. So H&E, what does that mean? Hematoxylin and eosin. Those are the two stains that pathologists use as the standard. And so we're trying to then make a more powerful microscope than the old-fashioned microscope through digital imaging. And if you think now about artificial intelligence and medicine, everything about AI depends upon digital starting point. If you have just a sort of analog starting point, you can't really do AI with that. You have to have gone digital. So that's part of it. So primary diagnosis, that means not just for teaching purposes, but when you get a case on somebody who's sick and you're deciding what that case represents and what they have, and you're putting a name on their disease, that you're able to do that using digital means without using actual science, using digital science. So that approval, the FDA gave that approval in April 2017. So it's fairly recent. And okay, I'm going to move ahead here. So these are sort of the steps that you can think of. Now, in the past, there have been robotic microscopes and telepathology. You can imagine hooking up a video camera to a microscope and then being physically far from where the microscope is and just looking at what's there, being able to using robotic control of the microscope to see what that slide shows and then say what you think is wrong. So that's called telepathology. So that's been around for quite a while now, maybe 30, 40 years. And so let's gearing up for digital workflow, and what are some of the reasons for pushback? Anyway, yeah, so you need to choose your system and then you try to sell it to the people locally. So, there is the cost, but there's also the pathologist's willingness to go digital. Yes.
Why are they so against going? Is it just that they like using microscopes? I just found it kind of tedious.
I think it is that they think that anything they have to learn takes time to learn, and adding this is going to lengthen their workday, and they're not going to get paid anymore, but they're just going to have more work because they're having to learn a whole new way of doing
So it's
things.
not that they don't want it; they just don't want to learn it.
Yeah, and I think you may feel the same thing. I mean, you're in a part of the period of your life where you're supposed to be learning new things, but after this is done, right, once you're out and you have a job, you may feel that, school is behind you now, and you don't want to keep having to learn new things all the time. You want to be trained for this job that you're doing and have it be fairly stable, and that was actually, historically, that's been the case with many jobs, that they remain the same for decades, and it's only in recent times where you really can't. But even though you can't count on that anymore, people still want it. That's the deal. And so, will it take my job? Will it lead to decreased academic time? I'll never go home. It'll slow down. So you can imagine that the people running the show know that eventually it'll make everything faster, right? It'll mean that more cases can be looked at in the same period of time and so on. But that's not the vantage point of the individual pathologist, because he's thinking he's going to have to spend time learning how to do this thing, and that the scanning also, that takes time. Of course, it's getting faster and faster. Scanning speed depends upon things like computer clock speed, and that's getting faster and faster. But this is also a real thing that they're thinking, why should I cooperate with a system that's going to put me out of business, that's going to make me irrelevant, right? But it's sort of like a discontinuous view of the future, because it isn't just your job that's like that. It's like all human jobs potentially are like that they. If you pick the job that you think is least likely to be replaced by a machine, chances are it already is. Like you can think of psychotherapy, for instance. You think, well, that requires all these human characteristics, and so machines will never be able to do that. But then thinking about it another way, if you need to talk to a psychotherapist, you're giving up a lot of secrets, right? You're talking about a lot of very private stuff. You may prefer to do that with a machine rather than a person. You may think you could trust the machine more, and the machine may be more even-handed. You say something really shocking, and it still respects you and everything. Where you'd be afraid if it was a person. That once you confess this, that they won't give you good therapy anymore because their opinion of you has gone down. Right? So actually, machine-generated psychotherapy in certain settings has worked well for a long time. So there's hardly anything you can think of that you can be sure that machines won't ever be able to do. If you can describe it, they can do it. I suppose if there's a job that you can't put in words, right? You cannot describe this job, then maybe, at least for a time, machines wouldn't be able to do it because they can't sort of make sense of what it is, but most people couldn't either. So these are some of the reasons for doing it. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is switch to the other set of slides. So one of the other features of this area is a certificate course. Like a lot of people say, wow, what is this digital pathology, and does anybody really understand the area? So there are courses you can take where you can get a certificate that you've been certified as knowing the area. And so it's the same person who created this other slide set. It's just for a different purpose. So this is from the Digital Pathology Certificate program. It's the same person who created the previous slide set. It's just for sort of a different purpose. So, let's see, let me just figure this away. Okay, so the original idea of telemedicine, this was in 1924, radio news, put your tongue out for the doctors. so anyway, the idea of using electronic communications for practicing medicine remotely has been out there for a long time. Now, if you look at how digital pathology is defined, digital pathology is a dynamic, image-based environment that enables the acquisition, management, of interpretation of pathology information generated from a digitized glass slide. So whole slide images. Right, and visual information is central to pathology. So a microscope produces a magnified image without artifact, resolves separate details, well, contrast between those details. The digital camera samples the image so as to retain contrast and resolution. Okay. So this is similar to what I was showing you before, this sort of transition. So the evolution, digital pathology has continued to evolve over the last decade with multiple applications in pathology, such as frozen sections. But it's interesting that they mention that because the FDA approval excluded 3 things. So it didn't approve this for just everything. It approved it for everything except frozen sections, which is providing an immediate answer, like the patient is being operated on, their operative field is wide open, and the Surgeon takes a piece of whatever the thing is, and so in order to decide what to do next in the operation, they need a quick reading, and that's called a frozen section. You freeze the tissue, cut slides of it. So that is not approved for digital pathology. Cytology is also not approved for digital pathology. Cytology is looking at individual cells, like pap smear. That's what that is, where you swab an area of the body and you get individual cells and layer them on a slide. And the reason why that's not ideal for scanning is that it has significant depth. Not only does the cell itself have some depth, but there can be groups of cells that stay adherent to each other. So you sort of have to focus up and down. And you can scan something at multiple focal planes, but it's very time consuming. That's called the z-axis. You can think of X, Y, and Z. So that z-axis scanning is expensive and slow, and so the FDA figured that cytology will not work. And similarly, hematopathology, looking at blood cells in blood. It's kind of the same thing. So those three things are excluded from the FDA's approval of whole slide imaging for primary diagnosis. Okay, telemicroscopy as a tool. So this has been around for some time, sending sort of video images. So 1973, pathologists diagnosed lymphosarcoma by a satellite in a patient on a ship docked in Brazil. 1986, the term telepathology was coined by Weinstein. In 1990, a network of telepathology workstations was established in Norway to provide frozen sections service to 5 remote hospitals. And in the 90s, this expanded much more. In the last decade, we've seen numerous applications with digital pathology. Many telepathology studies have been done in the past 20 years. And so digital pathology then provides a lot of advantages beyond just doing things remotely. So if you think about, like, yourself thinking about what if you had an operation and there was nobody locally in the hospital who could read the slide and determine, like, if this lesion was a malignant tumor and needed to be removed or was really just fine, so on. And the idea of doing that remotely may seem to you like it's just a little bit much, and I think that's the same that the FDA felt. So although frozen sections have been done using telepathology, it's not approved by regulatory bodies thus far. So, what I thought I would tell you a little bit is how I feel this talk that I've given you today fits into the course. I think, I'm just interested in your understanding the big concepts. Like, I'm not expecting you to learn, pathology during the hour that I'm talking. And what I thought is, on the 11th, that's the last time I see you for a while, because I've got 2 weeks of meetings after that. So the 11th, a week from today, I thought we would just talk about the midterm. It's not mainly me, it's like you probably have questions about, the midterm and so on. We don't have to take the whole class session. If you only have 55 minutes of questions, you don't have to spend 80 minutes on 55 minutes. But, and you don't all need to come. Those of you who feel that you already know enough about the midterm, you have other things to do, but if you're really quite interested, so I have done this before. It tends to reduce the tension and stress around this one exam, right? We only have a single exam. It's only worth 20% of your grade. It isn't like the end of the world, and it comes relatively early in the course. And if you really bomb on the midterm and just do stellar work after that, we can take that into account and so on. But so that's what I would like to do, is to spend that day, 1 week from today, talking about the midterm to whatever detail you want to. It's sort of up to you. Now, the practice exam, the first day quiz you had, is similar to the midterm. It's just shorter, but even some of the questions are the same and that sort of thing. So I think that also makes it easier. It's not this tremendous unknown factor. When you get the paper, it's going to be completely unfamiliar. Like you're completely blindsided by what it is I've chosen to test you on. I want to remove that feeling where you feel that you kind of know, and also the questions on the nanotech, and then the quantum biology, those two areas. So I'm going to give you links to previous lectures. You can look at them, and then you can get together with Gary Goldsand and kind of talk about things with him, and that will be the way that you prepare for those two areas. And I can already tell you that the quantum biology questions are just like short essays, where you're asked about some broad topic in that area, and you talk about that. And even though you don't get to meet Jack face to face this year, because he's in Italy and you're here, he will be the person grading that. So I'll digitize, I will scan your papers and send it to Jack Tazinski, and he will grade that part of the midterm. Dr. Burrell has been seriously ill in the last few months, and so that's the reason that he isn't teaching you face to face. But he knows what we're doing, and so with him there'll be some like short answer and multiple choice. Do you have other questions at the moment?
Do we have access to that quiz that you gave us on the first day? I don't really remember.
Yeah, I guess what I could do on on the 11th is bring like copies and get them back again. Yeah, I don't know, it's sort of a quirky part of the course, right? But I mean, I do, you know, describe it on the first day. It's just, you may be, you know, distracted when you had it on the first day, and you can't remember anything about it. But I also like the fact of being able to look at whether you learned anything from the first day. Give you exactly the same questions, and if you answer them the same, then maybe I'm doing something wrong in the course because you're not learning anything. So anyway, yeah. Well, I'll do that. So read from today. You don't have to take it again, but you can look at it just to see what it's like. Yeah, and so any other questions? So one of the reasons I did this today is we have an important presentation next Thursday that uses some of this content. I needed to work on it anyway. I might as well share it with you. It also is the main thing that we're working on right now. So I mean, it gives you kind of insight into, you know, what I do in the video. Okay, so I'm sorry I didn't fill up the whole 80 minutes, but maybe you find something else useful to do for the next 20 minutes. Yeah. So I guess that's it. Thank you.